circumvent the reality that, and hit subscribe, this is important, the damage is done. Politico article, Defendant Bolton has gambled with national security of the United States. He's exposed his country to harm and himself to civil and potential criminal liability, the judge wrote in his 10-page order. Game, set, match. This is the third indictment and arrest for President Trump and the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Ratcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard in President Trump's administration. We're going to read you exactly the 10-page order written by the judge. Bolton was the national security advisor to the president. He was entrusted with countless national security secrets and privy to countless sensitive dealings. To Bolton, this is a selling point. His book he rushed to write an account of his behind closed doors experiences and produced over 500 pages of manuscript for review. Not 4 months later, Bolton pulled the plug on the process and sent the still under review manuscript to the publisher for printing. Many Americans aren't able to renew their passports within 4 months. But Bolton complains that reviewing hundreds of pages of national security's tell-all deserves a swiftable timetable. Access to sensitive intelligence is rarely consolidated in individuals, and it comes as no surprise to the court that the government requested several iterations of review headed by multiple officers. But what is reasonable to the court was intolerable to Bolton, and he proceeded to publication without so much as an email notifying the government. Then I want to read you this right here. Conclusion. Defendant Bolton has gambled with the national security of the United States. He's exposed his country to harm and himself to civil and potential criminal liability. But these facts do not control the motion of the court. Okay. So the book was already out. The motion was denied because the book was... This is it right here. This is exactly why, almost certainly why he'll be indicted and arrested.
The right time, of course. I want to give you some background that's never given for some reason. You see, this matter involving John Bolton and his book and the classified documents and information, it was litigated. And what happened was, it went before a senior judge by the name of Royce Lamberth at the district court in Washington, D.C. I know Royce Lamberth well. I had some cases in front of him. He was appointed in the 1980s. He was a Reagan appointee. There was a point in time, as I recall, that he was involved in the criminal division or the civil division. And so there was a case in front of him. On June 20th, 2020, he issues an opinion, and I want to read this to you. You're going to find this fascinating. What happened is the Department of Justice goes into court because John Bolton released his book with classified information in it. The background, John Bolton accepted a role as National Security Advisor. This is written in the decision by Judge Lamberth. In April 2018, in this position, Bolton directed and supervised the work of the National Security Council staff on behalf of the president. Think about that position, how important it is. He left his post on September 10, 2019. Within 2 months, he secured a book deal. The government anticipates the public officials will seek to publish accounts of their experiences. When those officials have access to sensitive information that implicates national security, the government guards that information by conditioning employment on a guarantee of non-disclosure. Bolton accepted this condition of employment and executed multiple non-disclosure agreements with the government. In one agreement, Standard Form 312, Bolton agreed that he would, quote, never divulge classified information to anyone unless A, he has officially verified that the recipient has been properly authorized by the United States government to receive it, or B, he has been given prior written notice of authorization from the United States government that such disclosure is permitted.
So like Schiff, like Comey, like others, he almost certainly leaked classified information. And what took place was he did so. Comey, Schiff, Bolton, Letitia James, everyone who's going to get indicted, Hillary Clinton eventually, almost certainly, what is going to take place is that there's a reality check. They never imagined Trump would win again. They never imagined in a million years that there would be judges, there would be a system, there would be a protocol, a bureaucracy leveled against them. They actually broke the law in trying to spread gossip and rumors, which is what's called journalism today. Gossip, rumors, hearsay, innuendo, to disparage and demean President Trump. They did so to create a narrative, whether it was Trump working with Russia, which was false and a lie, the biggest lie ever told in American politics, or it was Trump said both sides, Trump this, it's chaotic. And so they wanted to create a zeitgeist. They wanted to create not only a narrative, but they wanted to conjure and fabricate mythology. This is part of wonderful, morally superior, highly educated liberal mythology on Trump, that he's chaotic and he lies so much and he's so terrible and a monster. The opposite is true. He's the best, one of the best presidents we have ever had in this country's history. And look at the people who were leveled against Trump. Hollywood, corrupt intel agencies, people like Bolton, who wrote a book, and oh, by the way, oopsie, we might have put classified data in the book just to despair. Does it benefit anyone to try to destroy Trump? He's the Obi-Wan Kenobi of politics. Every time somebody tries to destroy Trump, they themselves get ruined.
In the event Bolton was uncertain about the classification status of information, he was required to confirm from an authorized official that the information is unclassified before he may disclose it. Violation can result in assigning to the United States government all royalties, remunerations, and emoluments that have resulted, will result, or may result from any disclosure, publication, or revelation of classified information not consistent with the terms of SF 312. Bolton agreed to abide by the restrictions of SF 312 unless and until he is released in writing by an authorized representative of the United States government. Another agreement form, 4414, detailed conditions Bolton must follow to gain access to highly classified, sensitive, compartmental information, SCI. That's the highest level. Here, Bolton agreed to submit for security review any writing or other preparation in any form that contains or purports to contain any SCI or description of activities that produce or relate to SCI, or that he has reason to believe are derived from SCI, that he contemplates disclosing to any person not authorized to have access to SCI, or that he is prepared for public disclosure. Bolton promised not to disclose the contents of such preparation with or show it to anyone who is not authorized to have access to SCI until he had written authorization that such disclosure is permitted. Now,
so I just read you the judge's order, the 10-page order you could find in Politico. He published the book without President Trump's administration signing off on it. This is so clear-cut, okay? The mortgage case against Letitia James is clear-cut. She put things that were not true on the documents. Nobody had to accuse people around Trump of potential collusion. And Trump inflating his net worth as a billionaire president. I mean, these are absurd leaps of logic. You'd have to be a complete imbecile to believe that Trump was a Kremlin operative who inflated his net worth. You'd have to have zero functioning brain cells. But again, the certain wonderful morally superior among us believe this nonsense because of people like Bolton and wonderful journalists and former intel officials who all broke the law. Okay? There's likely journalists that broke the law too, because if your source is only there to disparage the existing administration, and you're the journalist writing and publishing and editing nonsense, knowing that it's false, well, you can't just stand by and say, well, the source told me it's journalism. It's like, no, you've become a Democratic Party operative or a Republican Party operative.
Watch what sweet potatoes do to
December 2019, Bolton submitted a draft manuscript to the NSC for pre-publication review. Over the following 4 months, Bolton worked to incorporate the edits he received from the Senior Director for Records Access and Information Security Management at the NSC, Ellen Knight. These edits were iterative and extensive. And on April 27, 2020, Knight communicated to Bolton that she no longer considered the manuscript to contain classified material. Bolton claims that he and Knight discussed the possibility that the final written authorization might be ready as early as that afternoon. The written authorization did not issue, and Knight soon clarified that the process was ongoing. Weeks passed without further communication between Bolton and the government. On June 8, 2020, John Eisenberg, Deputy White House Counsel and legal advisor to the NSC, issued a letter to Bolton that claimed the manuscript still contained classified information. By that point, Bolton had already delivered a final manuscript to his publisher for printing and shipping without written authorization and without notice to the government. What happened was the Department of Justice under President Trump went into court to try to get an injunction to prevent any further printing and distribution of the book. The judge said, yes, Bolton disputes that his book contains any classified information and emphasizes his month-long compliance with the publication review process.
It was not for Bolton to dispute the any classification process. Things could have been retroactively classified. Okay, well, it might not have affected him because his book would have been already confirmed as having no classified data. But it's a review process that it's almost like you're going to the DMV and the DMV says, no, your driver's license is not ready yet. And then you dispute the process of them giving you the driver's license. Like, no, you don't have that right. These are the same people who are like, national security. And I'm like, they didn't blink or think twice regarding Hillary Clinton's classified data on servers. Special access program intelligence and classified data on secret servers. Okay, they just voted Clinton, no problem.
Bristles at the mixed messages sent by pre-publication review personnel, questions the motives of intelligence officers. Bolton could have sued the government and sought relief in court. Instead, he opted out of the review process before its conclusion. Unilateral fast-tracking carried the benefit of publicity and sales and the cost of substantial risk exposure. This was Bolton's bet. If he's right and the book does not contain classified information, he keeps the upside mentioned above. But if he's wrong, he stands to lose his profits from the book deal, exposes himself to criminal liability, and imperils national security. Bolton was wrong. This is the judge. The government submitted classified declarations for the court's ex parte review in camera. So the court looked at the documents or the notes or whatever information was at issue. On June 19, 2020, the court held ex parte hearing for further in-camera review with the government. The parties, the judge, in the chambers reviewed the information. Upon reviewing the classified materials, as well as the declarations filed on the public document, the court is persuaded that defendant Bolton likely jeopardized national security by disclosing classified information in violation of his non-disclosure agreement obligations.
The D.C. court already knew this in 2020. What do you think Kash Patel and John Radcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard, so they have the receipts. So we already knew that Comey and Schiff and Bolton and others almost certainly leaked classified data. We already knew this. We knew it all. If you watch this channel, I've been telling you the same thing. And people, complete, imbeciles have said, H.A. Goodman is, going off the deep end. It's like, no, it's right there. It's in the judge's orders, a 10-page order here in 2020. We had literally Comey leak information in front of the whole planet, telling Susan Collins that he did so specifically to create the Mueller probe. He leaked information that was at one point classified because it was reportedly classified. He leaked information specifically to create the Mueller probe. He said that he was very proud of it. It's like unbelievable. And then Schiff is accused of leaking information for about 10 years now. We already knew all of this, but we have the receipts now because Trump and President Trump's administration actually has all the government agencies that these people used to go after Trump. I mean, it's pretty, they never thought it would be possible, ever. That's why you need to hit subscribe to this channel right now. This is not a revenge tour. It's called, not just karma, it's called people broke the law trying to set up and frame Trump and accusing him of breaking the law. So now Trump is going to ensure that those who broke the law trying to set up and frame him get indicted, arrested, convicted, okay? You can't break the law going after your political rivals. We're going to say this very slowly. So the wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats and never Trump Republicans, they're morally superior, and they need to be, you need to explain this to them. It's like teaching physics to a house cat. They're not going to really understand, but you cannot break the law going after Trump or setting him up and framing him, even if you think he's mean and orange. You can't do that. You can't write books spreading nonsense and gossip. You can't accuse him of a rebellion. You can't accuse him of being a Kremlin operative. You can't try to kick him off the ballot or imprison him for a speech. These things you can't do. They're all criminal in nature. That's why people are being indicted. It's not a revenge tour. Not a revenge tour. It's literally no one is above the law tour. That's the phrase that's apropos here.
Now that is damning. Bolton was the national security advisor to the president. He was entrusted with countless national secrets and privy to countless sensitive dealings. To Bolton, this is a selling point. His book is entitled The Room Where It Happened. He rushed to write an account of his behind closed door experiences, produced over 500 pages of manuscript for review. Not 4 months later, Bolton pulled the plug on the process, sent the still under review transcript to the publisher for printing. Many Americans are unable to renew their passports within 4 months, but Bolton complains that reviewing hundreds of pages of a national security advisor's tell-all deserves a swifter timetable. Access to sensitive intelligence is rarely consolidated in individuals, and it comes as no surprise to the court that the government requested several iterations of review headed by multiple officers. But what is reasonable to the court was intolerable to Bolton, and he proceeded to publication without so much as an email notifying the government. The judge's conclusion, Judge Royce Lamberth, district judge. Defendant Bolton has gambled with the national security of the United States. He has exposed his country to harm and himself to civil and potentially criminal liability. But those facts do not control the motion before the court, and so he denied the injunction. But that's not the point. That is a damning statement by a judge in an 18-page decision where he looked at the classified information. Damning. Which is why almost none of the news media are reading to you what I just read to you.
They asked Aldrich Ames, the CIA traitor turncoat, years back, this is in the 80s, when he was literally just giving, like Robert Hansen at the FBI and other Americans who turned on their country. When they asked Aldrich Ames, well, you gave classified data, you gave secrets to the Soviets. His response was, they weren't secrets, it wasn't a big deal because they had all the information anyway. And it wouldn't have harmed national security. He took it upon himself. And let's just assume for a second that maybe some of what he said was correct, which it wasn't, but let's assume. You still can't, it wasn't, but let's assume. You still can't unilaterally decide what is appropriate in terms of classified data and what isn't. You can't unilaterally run Secret Service. You can't unilaterally write a book and say, yeah, well, there's nothing there that's classified. So, you're losing me money if I go through the review process. So these are easy criminal acts. If you put classified data in a tell-all book like an imbecile, then it's a crime. If you lie on mortgage documents, it's a crime. If you leak classified data and do a whole bunch of other things, like potentially Comey did, it's a crime. Lie under oath, which everyone knew. The man was deceitful the whole way, lying by omission, gleefully lying, and maybe not overtly, but circumventing the truth, trying to mislead Congress. And he did. They all think they literally are above the law. The law does not pertain to them. They tried to say that Trump, nobody's above the law. Nobody's above. This was all an act. That's why Trump won. That's why J.D. Vance is going to win. That's why Democrats, for a generation? When are they going to win again? In 2030? I want to know. I mean, things change, but I mean, will they change that much? Who's going to be suddenly electable on a national stage? AOC? Pelosi? Who do they have to save their political party? That's why the Clintons were so powerful, because they saved the Democrats after 4 years of Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter single-handedly, maybe a nice person and all of that, but single-handedly destroyed the Democrats from 1980 until 1993, 92, 93. It was about 13 years. Then the Clintons came and revived the Democrats. That's why they had so much influence for so long. But you had 8 years of Reagan and then 4 years of Herbert Walker, because America did not want to go back to Jimmy Carter. No. And America doesn't want to go back to Biden or Democrats. So you're looking at, 13 more years.
This is from the judge. United States of America versus John Bolton, June 20, 2020. This is what the judge put out. So the Department of Justice in 2020 launches an investigation of Bolton, a criminal probe into the classified information. And what are they looking at? Well, you've heard of it before, the Espionage Act. No doubt they are. They even set up a grand jury. And they're looking under the Espionage Act, I assume 18 U.S.C. 793. Also, for those who are wondering about a statute of limitations, since this was 5 years ago, under the Espionage Act, Section 18 U.S.C. 19, it's a 10-year statute of limitations. So no statute of limitation is run, or it's not even arguably run. And so they were doing a criminal investigation. And then what happened? The Biden regime takes over. Merrick Garland takes over. And what do? Now keep something in mind. Bolton's book comes out months before the election. It's intended to harm Trump. Keep something else in mind. The so-called impeachment committee in the House, the Democrats, they wanted to interview Bolton. He refused. He saved whatever information he decided to present for his book. So it was clearly profit-oriented, right? So he refused to testify to them, not on purely constitutional grounds, because he would turn around and then present it in his book. Well, what happened to that investigation that was launched? I mean, you heard what the judge said. What happened to that investigation? Here's what happened to it. June 16, 2021, the Biden regime's in power, the Attorney General's Garland, and they issued the following stipulation of dismissal. Pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 41A1A2, the parties stipulate the dismissal of this action with prejudice to all parties to bear their own fees and costs. That's it. No explanation. One sentence. We dismiss the case against John Bolton.
If the Democrats defended Hillary Clinton's servers, secret servers with top secret intelligence transferred onto them, do you think that they care about classified data in Bolton's book? Okay, by the way, hit subscribe if you're new. H.A. Goodman's other channel. Go to the description. I will have a segment, very important segment, up on H.A. Goodman's other channel right after this. Okay, we're building that channel. Hit subscribe and share that everywhere. That'll be the latest segment on H.A. Goodman's other channel will be in the pinned comment. Please share it everywhere. Very important. And so they didn't care. Biden's administration didn't care about the classified data allegedly in Bolton's book. So let's continue.
They kill the investigation. It's done. Why? Why? Where are the underlying documents that were used? Did he turn them back to the government? Is that good enough under the federal law? That's the politics, isn't it? After a scathing opinion by a judge like this, after the book itself presents evidence of classified information, that was withdrawn, removed from the Department of Justice? Isn't the politics, this document, the June 16, 2021 document from the Biden regime, without explanation, just dismissing the whole thing? Now, do you think that would fly with anybody else? Anybody else? Now, let's dig into this.
What's better after 50 when? Gym or Tai Chi?
One builds ego, the other reverses.
So at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, Friday morning, the FBI goes to John Bolton's home and to his office. They have a warrant. Warrants are backed up by affidavits and other pieces of information, evidence that they may have. You need to have probable cause to show the court of possible crime that was committed. And the Espionage Act, as I mentioned, 18 U.S.C. 793. There could be other aspects that they're looking into as well. The Presidential Records Act, who knows? They're looking at the removal, destruction, concealment, use, misapplication of classified information. Bolton's book. The question is, what happened to that classified information? The documents, notes, other information? All accounted for? Were they put to other uses? New York Post indicates this investigation is broader than just the documents related to the book, but it's a leak investigation. They report leaks that are being investigated. They report during the Biden administration. Okay? So that's beyond the book, even though these pieces of information are in the book. The fact that any information was used, even if it's in your head, there's not physical documents or texts or emails of any kind, after your service in a way that's inappropriate is enough. So we've discussed this before in the documents case. It's a very broad statute, very broad statute. So the politics was when the Biden regime cut it off. Now, this is the same Biden regime that unleashed holy hell against Donald Trump as he left the presidency. Within months of leaving the presidency, the Mar-a-Lago raid. Oh, it's not a raid. Okay, it's a warrant. It's a search. But it's funny how they're now calling the Bolton warrant with a search a raid. But when it was Trump, don't call it a raid. It was a court-authorized warrant with affidavits. It was unbelievable.
They wanted to embarrass President Trump. They wanted to embarrass him. They took his voice away. Every social media platform prevented him from speaking. They treated President Trump in a manner that they would dislike and they would find reprehensible if leveled against them. If leveled against them, if they were silenced, if they were, leveled with 1,000 indictments, okay, then they would actually stop. That's why you had Bernie Sanders say nothing about being cheated in 2016, because he's not Trump. That's why Biden, after 3 weeks of negative media coverage, stepped down. He didn't have to step down. Joe Biden didn't have to step down. He was the president. He got the most votes ever. He could have said, you know what? I'm not stepping down. I don't care what George Clooney says. But that's not the Democratic Party mentality, mindset, paradigm. The way wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats think is, oh my God, George Clooney and Hollywood and media don't like me. I must step down. Oh my God, Bernie Sanders. Debbie Wasserman cheated me, but that's okay. I got to take one for the team. They have a collective. They're not individuals. It's like a hive collective AI script. Trump, they tried to destroy him. He got stronger. They tried to ruin him, and everyone who tried to ruin him is now getting ruined. And for what purpose? He only won again. He's the Obi-Wan Kenobi of politics. That's why you had, not everybody, but there were certain wonderful, morally superior, liberal Democrats, good people, beautiful people who disowned friends and family. I can't be your friend anymore. I can't be your friend. I was your first friend. I was your first friend in high school. You're disowning me. Are you kidding? And it's like, I can't be your friend anymore. You vote for Trump. You like Trump. And they believe the hysteria and nonsense. But the average Trump supporter is not going to put friends and family below, not going to put politics above friends and family. You're supposed to put friends and family and friendship and love above politics. Politics is not as important as the bond of a family member. But if you're morally superior, and it's almost always not, I'm sure Republicans or conservative Trump supporters have done this too, but it's almost always the morally superior liberal Democrat who ruins a Thanksgiving dinner or a get-together because they're, on this apoplectic tirade about evil monster orange Trump. And they believe the nonsense. They believe that everything Comey and Hillary Clinton and Bolton and Letitia James and the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post and New York Times and Daily Beast and Atlantic and Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert, they think that everyone that they think is an expert or cool or interesting or informative is against Trump. So therefore, Trump must be the devil. Plus, it's tribalism, and they're in an atheistic political religion. If they deviate from the collective within the Democratic Party, they will lose friends and family. So therefore, they feel they must do that also. They can't be seen with a Trump supporter. Oh my God, even though he won twice. And Biden now and Democrats are pretty much done for about 13 years. Biden did what Jimmy Carter did to the Democratic Party. And they're in complete shambles now. The only thing they can do is cheerlead political violence, which they do all the time.
Of course, there's a huge difference. Donald Trump was president. It's been my argument from day one. The Espionage Act doesn't apply to a president or a former president. Read the history of it. Read it. It was passed in 1917. It had no intention of being applied to a president of the United States. And how could it? The Constitution trumps any statute. President of the United States can classify or declassify at will. He doesn't have to go through a process. He doesn't have to ask an underling. He is the head of the executive branch. He's in the Constitution. Classified, declassified. He can declassify on the spot. The president even said at the time, if I'm thinking I'm declassifying, I'm declassifying. People mocked it, but he's correct because there's no way this statute can legitimately apply to him. That aside, notice how aggressively they went after him. Warrant. They went after his home. They went into his home. They took photographs. They made them public. They tried to humiliate him. And on and on and on with the documents. Oh, we had all these debates, the Espionage Act, the Presidential Records Act, and went on and on and on. And in the end, of course, the rogue prosecutor was unconstitutionally appointed and he lost his job.
That's why Bernie Sanders played ball when he was cheated in 2016. I'm the only person on the planet who still cares. I used to be the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post. And the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post. It's embarrassing for both me and people who still like Bernie Sanders. But you think Bernie Sanders would fight for his voters or his constituents or, that the people who gave donations only to have that money given to pay for the Steele dossier that was a complete compilation of lies meant to set up and frame Trump that Comey and others used, Brennan? But do you think that that Bernie Sanders would have fought the Democratic Party or stood up for himself or his voters and said, "Hey, you cheated me. I won't accept this. And oh, by the way, Julian Assange published accurate documents. These emails were literally written by the Democrats that showed I was cheated." He would never say that because he's not Trump. God bless President Trump. He sees, he is not intimidated. The man is not intimidated. He doesn't play Democratic machine politics. You go after Trump, and they tried to take his life, and thank God he moved that head. And there was a firefighter that lost his life. Where are the Pulitzer Prizes at the New York Times or Washington Post finding out about what happened with the Butler, Pennsylvania? Oh, that's right. You're not going to find anybody at the Washington Post or New York Times or the Daily Beast or the Atlantic winning any Pulitzer Prizes for finding out what took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. God forbid, God forbid, God forbid the tables were turned. They would devote their lives, their souls, their every moment of their being to finding out what took place. But with Trump, radio silence. But that's why Bernie Sanders didn't fight back. That's why Bernie Sanders just said, oh, okay, I was cheated. I'm not going to say anything about it. In 2016, the downfall of the Democratic Party started when they had a primary that didn't function. It was a complete farce. In fact, they literally in court stated they can pick anyone they wanted to. They didn't even need votes, or they don't need to abide by the votes. It's a complete facade. They literally choose the candidate, and they have these primaries simply for show. And still people are okay with it. It's like this. It's like zombie. They're like zombies. They just walk through life. Must vote Democrat. Must vote Democrat. Jimmy Kimmel said it's good. They don't. That's it. They don't like Tesla. It takes 3 weeks. Biden out. 3 weeks. Oh, Tesla bad. 3 weeks. Oh, ICE bad. It's 3 weeks of media coverage to foment whatever you want Democratic voters to believe. And that's why Bernie Sanders didn't want anything to do with this. He didn't want to get a Mar-a-Lago raid. And neither did Biden. But Trump don't care. He don't play. He's like the honey badger of American politics.
Yes, it's true that they dismissed the case. But Judge Cannon really forced it because she effectively dismissed him. Now, all that said, is this retribution? Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is not retribution. Oh, I see the sad faces on TV and the crocodile tears and look at Trump, he's a dictator and so forth. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard me read from the judge's decision. The issue is whether any crime was committed. It was the Biden regime that cut off the investigation. Cut it off. Because the book that came out trashing Donald Trump was helpful to the Biden regime. It was used right up to the election. That's where the politics is. That's where it is. But imagine being the FBI director, the Attorney General of the United States, and this issue is hanging out there. The book's still out there. The regime, the Biden regime, dismissed it without explanation. Never. There's never been an explanation. Because the explanation's obvious. It was done to help Joe Biden. That's, in my view, my personal opinion, where the reward is. That's my view.
So here it is again, conclusion from the judge. United States District Judge, Defendant Bolton has gambled with national security of the United States. He's exposed his country to harm and himself to civil and potential criminal liability. But these facts do not control the motion before the court. The government has failed to... Okay, so the book was already published, so that's why the motion was denied. Okay? That's why the motion was denied. But you can look at this. This is scathing. And here you have, let's see, you can do national security. You have 10 pages here of everything Bolton did wrong. And so this is really, the conclusion itself is really an indictment right here. Let's listen to Bolton talk really quickly. This is interesting.
Indeed. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Joining us now, Ambassador John Bolton. Ambassador, thanks for being here.
Glad to be with you.
I understand you have a book out.
Indeed.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the process first, some of the pushback, and then I want to get to the substance. Obviously, I've seen the interviews you've given. I have read the book in detail. It is very detailed. 500 pages of your time inside the room, as you say, in the room where it happened. How did you write this book? I saw in an interview that you said that the notes, you took lots of notes. The notes, as I said in my exit interview from the White House, were destroyed during the course of my tenure there. So how do you go back and fill in all of these blanks with that detail, these quotes, 500 pages?
Well, according to the judge, in one agreement, Standard Form 312, Bolton agreed that he would, quote, never divulge classified information to anyone. In the event that Bolton was uncertain about classification status of information, he was required to confirm from an authorized official that the information is unclassified before he may disclose it. Violation could result in assigning to the United States all royalties. So Trump's administration could possibly get all the royalties from his book, which would be total, like, I told you, it'd be total, it would just be poetic justice. But the government could get all royalties, remunerations, and emoluments that have resulted, will result, or may result from any disclosure, publication, or revelation of classified information not consistent with the terms. Bolton agreed to abide by the restrictions in SF 312. Unless and until he is released in writing by an authorized representative of the United States government. Well, let's just see what he says here. Let's just see what Mr. Bolton says here. How do you remember 500 pages of notes and ensure that there was no classified data? Let's see.
Well, this is the best recollection I can put together. I'm blessed with a pretty good memory, and I thought about how to do this. I wrote a book when I left the George W. Bush administration called Surrender's Not an Option. Went through much the same process.
When were the notes destroyed?
During the course of usually the weekend following when they were taken, throughout the thing, put in burn bags, that sort of thing. But no notes were taken with me after I left the White House.
If you live
They didn't destroy it, so you destroyed them.
That's correct, sure.
If you destroyed them, it would be a violation of the Presidential Records Act.
No. During the course of the work, this was something we had burn bags in our offices and put I don't know how many documents into the burn bags.
Once you destroy them, is that a problem legally for you because you destroy records that are supposed?
He destroyed records without a complete review process. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel. If he is telling the truth, then he almost certainly destroyed all of the records. We don't know. Okay, so then the agencies that say, hey, wait a second, he might have classified data. He did what Hillary Clinton did, potentially. He destroyed records before the agencies were able to look at all the records. He did not go through the entire review process, and then he's telling you right now that or back then, 5 years ago, he destroyed all the records, essentially, before the agencies were able to review them. Wow, this is fantastic national security.
Supposed to be kept.
No, I don't think these are records that are supposed to be kept, and they were not, and many other people followed the same pattern.
When did you decide to write the book?
Well, during the course of being in the administration, I had gone in as a lifelong conservative Republican, hoping that we would have a conservative Republican administration. And it didn't turn out that way. But I guess I should say also, I'm certainly not the first person in the Trump administration to write a book. Sean Spicer's written a book.
Lie by omission, circumventing the truth, misleading everyone on the planet. Sean Spicer didn't write a book about how terrible Trump was. Simply saying that someone else wrote a book, other people wrote a book, does not absolve the fact that you might have put classified intelligence in a book without the official review process, without the government authorizing it, and even the judge took him to task. Even the judge was like, yeah, what did the judge say? Even the judge said, Defendant Bolton has gambled with national security of the United States. He has exposed his country to harm and himself to civil and potential criminal liability. Oh, and by the way, the government gets all the royalties if he loses. Oh, can you imagine Trump Could you imagine the Truth Social after the government gets all the royalties? But these facts do not much. Okay, so here, let's continue.
Sarah Sanders has written a book. Others have written books.
Sure, not like this one.
This one could be seen as critical as opposed to the others, which are seen as favorable to the president.
Yes, and obviously it's at the center of another thing, which is the impeachment. I'll get to that in a minute. But you took this job as National Security Advisor under the trust of the president that those conversations were going to happen inside the White House. Fred Fleitz, your former chief of staff of the National Security Council, said this.
I don't believe national security advisors should be revealing internal candid discussions with the president. The president has to be able to know that whatever he says in those discussions won't be made public. And if he thinks they're going to be made public, a president won't consult with experts. And I think that's a very dangerous prospect for our national security.
How do you respond?
So Comey started this nonsense. Maybe he might not have started all the nonsense, but he started a lot of the nonsense with the Comey memos to memorialize a private conversation with Trump. So this is like, catnip for the morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats. Oh, Trump wanted to sell the country to Martians? That's what this person remembers? Well, doesn't it ring true? Who else would sell the country? Who else would sell the United States to Martians but Trump? Well, is there any evidence for it? No, but it's in a book. It's in a memo.
Respond to that.
Well, I don't see it that way at all. In fact, I addressed this precise question in a book review I wrote in 2014 about Bob Gates's memoir of his time as Secretary of Defense in the Bush and Obama administrations. And he published his memoir during the Obama administration, was criticized for that, was criticized for its potential effect on Hillary Clinton's presidential run, his former colleague when she was Secretary of State. And I made the point then that everybody in Washington is an adult in this process. We understand exactly the way it goes. My feeling in basically all of my government jobs, from lower levels up to the last job, was that anything I said could and quite possibly would be in the papers the next morning. And this is nothing new in American history, as I point out. In Washington's administration, Hamilton and Jefferson fought with each other through newspapers, funded in part by putting their writers on government salaries. And somehow, poor George Washington managed to stumble through it.
Some of those pictures of you in the back of meetings, adjusting your glasses, holding notes, look like in your mind you're arranging chapters of the book. At what time in the 17 months did you say, I got to start really thinking about this? And without detailed notes, were you going to be able to do it? You left in September, and your deadline was what? The fall.
Watch what magnesium does to your body.
I did something very similar, as I say, when I left the Bush administration, and that's the same pattern I followed here.
A couple of things on the pushback. Sarah Sanders this morning said this.
John Bolton was your classic case of someone who was completely drunk on power, who thought he was the president. He was constantly pushing his own agenda, which was all he cared about. The big problem for John Bolton is that's not how it works. He forgot that no one elected him to anything, and that it was President Trump and President Trump's agenda that mattered within the White House.
Thoughts?
Well, she's just flatly wrong on that. I think the duty of loyalty that a senior official owes is to the Constitution and people of the United States. We're not a feudal society.
The Supreme Court interprets the Constitution, not John Bolton.
This is not the Middle Ages. We don't owe loyalty to an individual, particularly an individual who routinely undercuts his own advisors in conversations with other people.
So this is the wonderful MSNBC talking points. Oh, we don't owe loyalty to Trump, so therefore you can what? Put classified data in a book? It's like the indefensible is always defended. They justify the indefensible. Well, Trump, you can't be loyal to him.
The president has talked about almost everything in this book at one level or another, and often simply not told the truth. So if the deal is,
what was that? That's exactly why things are classified. Genius.
It's his own advisors and conversations with other people. The president has talked about almost everything in this book at one level or another, and often simply not told the truth. So if the deal is
That's why things are classified. That's why you have a classification system. Sometimes, believe it or not, even Biden or President Obama or Jimmy Carter maybe told the American public or the world things that weren't true that happened to be classified at the time. Okay?
the president gets to say whatever he wants and the American people don't get to hear the truth, is that the kind of society you want?
Well, on the flip side, you have House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying you chose profit over patriotism. And here's what Adam Schiff said about all of this.
What John Bolton has demonstrated, and I think to the length and degree that he indicts Donald Trump, he also indicts himself for cowardice and for greed. Because there were people who did come forward, people like Colonel Vindman and Fiona Hill, who risked their careers, and he lacked that basic courage and patriotism. It was only the greed that made him come forward in this book.
So you say it's about the Constitution and support.
And that's what happens to all the never-Trumpers. They try to gain favor with the wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats who set up, the Russia hoax and create a new Cold War and McCarthy-era Red Scare. And they say, look, Democrats, we're just like you. We don't like Trump, but we're conservative, though. We're like good conservative Republicans like Bush, who created endless wars. And the Democrats say, oh, good, yes, we like you. And at the drop of a hat and a blink of an eye, they will turn and say, oh, but yes, you're still a conservative Republican, so this is how terrible you are for even wanting Trump or working with him. And so it's so hilarious. This was the moment where a lot of never-Trumpers were like, I'm going to align myself with Democrats and make money. And it's like, it did him no good. None of these people, whether you're Democrat or Republican, that went after Trump, they upended their lives by trying to upend Trump's life.
Supporting the American people, Democrats would say, why didn't you step up back then?
The Democrats have a lot of reason to be concerned, I think, because as I lay out in the book, their impeachment strategy was catastrophically wrong. I characterize what they did as impeachment malpractice. They were driven by their own political objectives to go after Trump as fast as they could, as narrow as they could, because they were concerned about messing up their own presidential nomination schedule. That's almost what they said about Donald Trump in Ukraine, misusing the power of government for his own political purposes. The reality of history is, and Watergate demonstrates this beyond debate in my view, the only way you have a real chance at impeachment and conviction is through a bipartisan process. If you look at the Watergate Committee, Sam Ervin, Democrat, chairing it, Howard Baker, ranking Republican.
Watergate was a break-in. Okay, it was literally a criminal act. There was literally nothing Trump did that was a criminal act other than potentially alter U.S. foreign policy, which, by the way, he didn't. And even the president of that country said that, Trump didn't leverage him or blackmail him or anything. But now Bolton is trying to, he's on the tightrope now. So he's not really getting the love that he wants from Democrats. So he's kind of like maybe defending Trump a tiny bit.
They didn't start out with the objective to impeach Richard Nixon, but they uncovered evidence, they went through a lengthy process, they had court fights, and they built a growing consensus in Congress that Nixon had to go. The first senator to call for Nixon to resign was Jim Buckley, conservative of New York. And eventually it was a group of Republican senators that went to the White House and said, Mr. President, you have to resign.
That was a very different time, and Republicans and Democrats had much more in common. Furthermore, you didn't have Jimmy Kimmel every single night regurgitating Democratic Party talking points. You didn't have media firmly on the Democrat or Republican side. There wasn't this political tribalism in 1972. Okay. And there wasn't, this political tribalism didn't exist until what, maybe 2015, 2016. Before then, you had Paul Ryan as Man of the Year at Time Magazine, something like that. You'd never get that now, because journalists and editors and publications and late night and Hollywood, they all know if they don't, this is what took place. If Hollywood, the music industry, all of journalism doesn't back the Democratic Party 24/7, they'll lose every election. And we're talking Congress, we're talking House, Senate, presidency, every 4 years, 6 years, every 2 years. They have, the only thing propping up the Democratic Party is an immense public relations monstrosity. That wasn't the case in the 70s. So you had Republicans and Democrats who would say, yeah, no, that's not right for the country. Now you can have Clinton with private servers and top secret intel, which would never, ever be allowed, ever. And they're like, oh, okay, well, still vote for her.
The Democrats took exactly the opposite approach. They pushed Republicans into a partisan corner in the House. They basically accomplished the same thing in the Senate. It's no wonder they're upset.
But you say in this book that they could have impeached on a number of different fronts. There were other impeachable offenses you write in the book. You also told Susan Page with USA Today that if you were a senator voting, you would have voted to convict, but there was more that you needed to know about Ukraine, and that might not be impeachable. Don't you feel some responsibility now that you're saying he should have been impeached on other things, but you never piped up?
Yesterday's network
Saying he should have been impeached. I'm saying there's a lot of reprehensible conduct, not all of which is impeachable. The fact was the Democrats were pursuing a strategy that was clearly going right into a ditch. And they had opportunities to
Japan, in which you weren't the decision maker.
That's correct. And ultimately, that's why I resigned. The point is that at least I can speak for myself, but I think for many others who have also resigned or left the White House or the administration, you work as hard as you can to provide the advice you think is best. There just comes a point where your political capital has been expended, where it's clear the president is not inclined to listen.
And was that?
The president doesn't have to listen. JFK didn't listen to the experts or his advisors when they said invade Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He doesn't have to listen to any advisor. He has to just find out what's best for the country.
At that point, the failure to launch an attack against Iran after the drone strike.
Ladies and gentlemen, go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right now. You will get a synopsis of this, and I will explain exactly why